Thank you for tuning in. This is Shikama Live. You can read all of my blog posts at shikama.wordpress.com. Your host, Kevin Cardinale. Today I'm going to talk about the lie that the White House came out with, and specifically that Obama said in his little dedication, the comic little dinner that he had the other night, talking about that Syria has dropped weapons of mass destruction on the freedom, quote-unquote, freedom fighters who are fighting against Syria. It is an out-and-out lie. And I'm going to go through some of the evidence. First of all, this Syrian civil war is a proxy war, and I will get into that later. Much as rebellion in Afghanistan in the 1980s was a proxy war by Western nations against the USSR, the Syrian civil war is a proxy war by Western nations along with Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Qatar against Iran. The U.S. has again been empowering potential enemies to fight a declared enemy, arranging shipments of Libyan arms from Benghazi to Syrian rebels via Turkey was almost certainly discussed at Ambassador Stevens' meeting with the Turkish ambassador at the Benghazi compound, not a consulate, as claimed by the State Department, where Stevens was murdered. One intelligence community does assess with varying degrees of confidence that the Syrian regime has used chemical weapons on a small scale in Syria, specifically the chemical weapon agent Marin. This assessment is based in part on physiological samples. Our standard of evidence must build on these intelligence assessments as we seek to establish credible and corroborated facts. For example, the chain of study is not clear, so we cannot confirm how the exposure occurred and under what conditions. We do believe that any use of chemical weapons in Syria would very likely have originated with the Assad regime. That's from the White House directly. They're actually admitting that they don't have specific evidence. They are trying to draw a conclusion from some physiological evidence, but we can't possibly believe that this physiological evidence is actually true, because this is the same thing that was said in another war, and that was the invasion of Iraq, right? The U.S. and its allies have declared the use of chemical weapons by the Syrian government a red line that, if crossed, would incur a direct military intervention which may include air and missile strikes, the establishment of a Libyan-style no-fly zone, and perhaps even a ground invasion. So, the Syrian government is quite aware that weapons of mass destruction or chemical warfare use constitutes crossing this red line. They are already been aware of this, right? But let's talk about the public's notion of what chemical warfare really is as opposed to what we think it is. Hollywood makes chemical weapons look like weapons of mass destruction. They make it look like you could put a test tube full of agent whatever, drop it in Grand Central Station, and every borough of New York, Manhattan, and upstate New York would all die. That is the notion that the U.S. public thinks chemical warfare acts like. So, let's go to experts and see what they say about chemical warfare. According to the Marine Corps in Iran-Iraq War, chemicals produce next to nothing unless used in mass quantities and in perfect weather conditions and in perfect strategic conditions, high ground to low ground. So those 3 points, it has to be used in massive quantities, day after day after day after day, and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of chemicals. They also said that the only thing that it really produced was an addendum to regular warfare, guns and tanks and planes. Second point, it has to occur in perfect weather conditions. They said that it had to occur, you had to use it for a maximum effect at the perfect season in that country, at the perfect time of day, and the last thing, it had to be strategically used. High ground to low ground, and your enemy had to be on the low ground. Otherwise, it would be useless. We go back to the Iran-Iraq War, when they tried to use chemicals during the rainy season in marshes. It had absolutely no effect whatsoever. And they even wrote this in their own journals. Lastly, chemicals have a low kill ratio. This is according to World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea. So the notion and the fear that you get when the president says, oh, the Syrian government has used chemical warfare and it is equivalent to weapons of mass destruction, he is lying. Point blank. Let's go to this article here. According to the U.S. military's own conclusion, the use of chemical weapons only enhances conventional warfare. But such weapons are not suitable for wiping out large swaths of enemy troops. Their effectiveness is such that the Syrian government could not justify their use, thus risk incurring direct Western military intervention. Therefore, for what strategic purpose would the Syrian Arab army deploy chemical agents on a small scale? Remember, it has to be used on a large scale. If the Syrian military already holds the initiative with far more effective conventional weapons, what purpose besides inviting the West to intervene militarily could using any quantities of chemical agents far too small to achieve any tactical gain serve? So directly from the U.S. military, they doubt the claims that the Syrian government has used chemical weapons. It is just not. It makes no strategic sense. Obama faced immediate global backlash, claiming weapons of mass destruction in Syria. Several countries immediately responded and said, we don't believe you. I love it. Now this is taken from direct quotes from the man that but who made statements that the White House used to invade Iraq. But Mr. Janabi, speaking in a 2-part series, Modern Spies, starting tomorrow on BBC Two, says none of it was true. When it is put to him, we went to war in Iraq on a lie, and that lie was your lie, he simply replies, yes. U.S. officials sexed up Mr. Janabi's drawings of mobile biological weapons labs to make them more presentable, admits Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, General Powell's former chief of staff. I brought the White House team in to do the graphics, he says, adding how intelligence was being worked to fit around the policy. And that policy was to invade Iraq. They are on not only the move, but they are winning the. Whoops. They are on the move, but they are not only on the move, but they are winning the war in Syria. And the people that they're calling, the people that they are calling the freedom fighters, or that we need to do something for the Syrian people, is a complete lie in and of itself. The people who are actually fighting the government are Al-Qaeda terrorists. Many newspapers have said, if you're trying to help assist this rebellion or civil war, the people that the government is fighting would turn around just as soon as fight the U.S. and Israel and Saudi Arabia. Obama is lying through his teeth, and Nancy Pelosi is also. This is an out-and-out lie. Chemicals are not being used, and chemicals are not weapons of mass destruction. Get it out of your head, learn some true science, and stop being a slave to fear. Thank you.